challenged the bid to connect Canvey with Corringham in the local economic partnership bidding process. Madam Deputy Mayor, I understand the views of Council and Parliamentary colleagues in Castle Point. An additional route off Canvey would benefit their constituents. However, I feel I must stand up for my constituents. An additional road would not benefit the people of Stamford and Corringham. The majority of traffic in our area is geared around Lakeside and London because that's where the main economic activity lies. An immediate route that did not go directly to this area would not be economical. The reason Dubai wanted to spend £1.5 billion in Stamford is because London is the main distribution centre for goods. Thus, the economic reasoning that makes Corringham more viable than Harwich or Felixstowe means that the need to access via Canvey does not exist. The main access, the main economic reasoning is access to the A13. I'm sure that the people of Canvey would very much like an alternative route to the A13, because obviously that's how they can access London and Lakeside far more efficiently than Sanders Farm. But in my mind, a scheme that benefits one community slightly and disadvantages another community massively is simply not very good policy. Thus, I see this as an option for a net increase of traffic into East Thurrock at a time when we can't afford it. This is also a matter of priorities. Myself and colleagues have met with C2C and Network Rail over the issue of removing level crossings in Stamford and East Tilbury. This is an issue of health and safety, as well as an issue of supporting the local economy by ensuring that people can move around our borough freely, whether they be residents or whether they be employers or employees. The LEP can only support so many schemes. In my mind, this scheme is nowhere near as vital as the issue of widening the A13, removing level crossings, and so on. I know this issue has been much discussed in the press. Over recent months I've been working to understand the LEP bidding process, and obviously we've been lobbying accordingly, but I feel it's time for this council to lobby very clearly and show clear leadership on what we want to see and what we do not want to see. Otherwise we can end up in a situation where Thurrock simply is not heard. Madam Deputy Mayor, the whole point of my motion is for us to be robust with our views, so colleagues on the LEP, colleagues who will sign off funding, know precisely where we stand as a local authority. One of the reasons that I've been critical of management mergers with Barking and Dagenham Council is because I feel that we have more weight to pull with Essex authorities, that we need to be loud and proud in Essex and make sure our partners know precisely what it is we want. In my mind, if we had a more authoritative role in Essex, quite possibly this bid could have been killed off right from the get-go, because colleagues would have known that it simply wouldn't have been accepted in Thurrock. Mr Mayor, I'm asking all members to support my motion as an economic necessity, but also to support the people of Stamford and Corringham who've already had to put up with enough in our road network. With several national and indeed international pieces of infrastructure in Thurrock, we need to be loud, clear and relentless with our views. Yes to widening the A13, yes to removing level crossings, and no to additional roads into East Thurrock. I'm very happy that my colleague, our party spokesman on Transport, Councillor Thompson, will second my motion, and I'm happy to move to the debate.
This evening, though I do, have to point out to some of the people who have spoken so far that this is not something that Thurrock Council has in its gift to allow or to not allow. This is a decision that ultimately will be made by Department for Transport as to whether they want to fund it and as to whether they want to see the road built. And I have to remind everybody here that this council has historically always opposed any such proposal for a road to Canvey Island. Certainly in the 20 odd years that I've been a member, that has always been our view, and I've seen little to change it. We are, however, now in a position where the government seems hell-bent on imposing a new Lower Thames crossing on Thurrock, possibly at option C, which as we all know is to the east of Tilbury, and is, in my view, the government's clearly favoured option. That means that we will have to be even more aware of any potential new access roads in the east of the borough. I believe there is a real fear that the two will go hand in hand. It might be useful just to rehearse the current situation, and that is that although a North Thames side link road proposal has been included in Castle Point's local development framework, and in the preliminary submission of the LEP in its growth deal and strategic economic plan, the case for funding the road has not yet been made at all. That doesn't, however, mean that we should dismiss the chances of such a scheme being successful until such a time as the government has made its intentions clear on a new crossing. The plan at the moment, as I understand it, is for the County Council to bid for funding that would enable a feasibility study to be undertaken, and then in due course to put together a package to see exactly how the road would be paid for. Currently, and it's because the government is being so slow with its decision making on the potential new crossing, which is creating massive uncertainty locally, government is not in a position to give Essex County Council, who are, after all, the Highways Authority, any encouragement at all at this stage that this road would be looked favourably upon, or conversely to tell them that the proposal should be dropped. What we do know is that the scheme would take something in the region of £70 million of private sector investment, and we're also told that should it be built, it would be a toll road. This gets my kind of suspicious nature going, because of course a new crossing would also be tolled, and government could well use the same piece of legislation that enables tolling the crossing to toll a new road that I think fits very, very clearly with Conservative agenda, both nationally and locally. Madam Mayor, as already been said, in light of the growth that Thurrock will accommodate in the coming years and the substantial increase in traffic flow that will inevitably be generated by some of these regeneration schemes, including London Gateway Port, we as a council must continue to do what we can to protect residents from the impact of traffic from any new highways, especially any new roads in the east of the borough, and that certainly includes any road connecting Canvey and East Thurrock.
I will be supporting this, and it is the right thing to do. But when the debate, or if a debate ever starts on this matter, one of the items we need to look at, and this is for the protection of our residents, and this is all this is about, is we have a big port development that has the potential of lorries, and it's about 10,000 lorry movements I think we're talking about. There is the chance that if this road is built, what I would love to see is width restrictions put on the manoway, and every lorry that comes out of DP Well turns right and goes through Canvey Island. Now, that's why I think we need to have a slightly open mind when we're saying, I don't want that link, because I don't want, and it's not because I don't want Canvey Island people coming through Stanford, because I don't want their cars driving past my residence, and that will just lead to a big mess. But if we actually get a benefit, which is where the lorries come out and turn right and drive through Canvey Island, then we may have to modify our stance on this.
I think what we've got to realise here is it's obviously election time coming up locally, so obviously this is where we're going to start getting a lot of debates now and they're up until May. But looking at the bigger picture here, it might be some sort of good idea, although I will be supporting this motion. But, as my colleague here said, if there are traffic that would go eastbound, out down to Canvey, that might be better. We must remember, 15 years ago, what did people say about the A130 from Benfleet to Chelmsford, all across Greenbelt land, Virgin Greenbelt land at that? I bet everybody in this room has been on that dual carriageway. So we've got to see the bigger picture here. 14,000 jobs we get told that's coming down to DP World eventually when it's fully operational. That's at least 28,000 vehicle movements that we could be coming in and out of that port every day. Probably double that. So we need to be starting to think of a bigger picture here. But what we must also remember here is this coalition government that says big words about not building on Greenbelt, on Triple SI land. We've seen over the last 18 months that what they say and what they do are two different things. So if there is going to be an application come from Castle Point, it won't be us that will be deciding it, it will be our friends up London. And that's one thing we've got to be very mindful of but we mustn't keep playing politics with people's lives, because I've got an idea that if this is on its way, then I'm afraid to say that the special circumstances is going to be the need for everybody in the South East, not just Thurrock. I will be supporting this motion.
I do love Councillor Smith's suggestion, although he should perhaps be thankful that being a person from Canvey isn't a protected characteristic under equality law, otherwise he might have found himself in hot water with some of his comments. I do take slight issue with Councillor Kent's suggestion that somehow this is local Conservative policy. Just to set the record straight, it's the Conservatives who are now moving against this, and equally we've been consistent in our opposition to option C as well over quite an extended period. So neither of these proposals have any support in local Conservative policy. Look, for the last 2 or 3 years, I would say that the majority of my casework load in Stamford East and Corringham Town has been generated from the council estates in the town centre, which many councillors would identify with. But over the last year, overwhelmingly, many of the issues I've had to deal with have been about roads, about highways, about the Newport development, about the roadworks. People in Stamford and Corringham recognise very clearly that whilst there will be wider benefits that come from economic development, for us it means more vehicles, more noise, more pollution and more congestion. And there is a real feeling in Stamford and Corringham that we are facing a decade of growth in all of those things. And now the suggestion that on top of all the traffic from DP World, on top of all the traffic from the proposed new developments on the refinery site at Thames Oil Port, we should also be expected to take a whole load of traffic wanting to use the area as a rat run to get on and off Canvey Island. Really does feel like the last straw. Economically, it makes no sense. It will have an impact on growth in the area. It will have an impact on business rates. Because at the end of the day, the junctions that have been put in have not been sized for that additional traffic. And that could very easily put off investors in Thames Oil Port and in the logistics park if they start to see gridlock happening on a regular basis. The way I see it, this is wrong either way. People are saying, well, it wouldn't be a huge traffic flow, it would be only a small increment. But let's look at it this way. If it is only a small amount of traffic, then what we've just put up is an expensive white elephant. If it turns out to be a large amount of traffic, then it will undoubtedly cause serious traffic problems right across East Thurrock, onto the A13 and right out to the wider highways network. There has been a lot of talk about this recently in the media. So far it's only really one side of that argument that's been getting the coverage. And what we're asking for tonight is for Thurrock to make its position clear, that we clearly highlight the major problems that this could generate in East Thurrock and across the borough, and make sure that both sides of this argument are heard. Thank you.
It does need to be done. I have absolutely no problem with it being done. But the reason we need to make our views very robust is because the feasibility study needs to reflect that Thurrock will not support this. If the feasibility study does offer alternative options for Canvey, perhaps dualling the current road that is off Canvey, perhaps that's something we can consider. There is an issue with Thurrock being taken seriously in Essex. I understand that both the leader of the council and senior officers were present at the meeting that did discuss the option of including this in the draft for the South East, and it has been included. And I think it's quite duplicitous to suggest this is a political issue when we had representations, and clearly they weren't taken seriously enough because they had been included.
Two local authorities and every other one's a Tory authority, yeah.
Well, first of all, we're not taking it particularly seriously in Essex because you're not very interested in Essex, and I've got no problem with saying that I disagree with my colleagues in Castle Point. I'm quite happy to say I support my constituents in Corringham and Stamford over their preferred scheme. The point needs to be made that as we do go forward into this process, we saw a very positive flurry of public engagement during the final weeks and final days of the Lower Thames Crossing debate. We've seen that can actively happen, especially to see this, here this evening with the petition presented. If the council plays a strong leading role, we can get that public swell of engagement leading up to funding being signed off, and we can keep this poor idea in touch.